for my project, I was looking at a literature review of the boar's influence on female reproduction. And boars can affect reproductive productivity in many ways in swine. They can affect farrowing rates, induction of puberty, estrus expression, the number of piglets born alive, and even the effectiveness of drugs used in reproduction, such as PG600. So the first thing I looked at was boar exposure during estrus detection. And in this study, 3 treatments were administered. We had a group with no boar exposure during estrus detection. The boars were housed several meters away from the pigs, and there was a screen around their pens to limit visual contact with the sows. There was a group with only fence line boar exposure during estrus detection, and there was a group that received physical contact with the boar in the pen during estrus detection. And the goal of this study was to evaluate the effect of boar exposure on estrus expression and farrowing rates. And the reason estrus detection is so important in swine is that in swine, behavioral estrus lasts 2 to 3 days, and ovulation occurs right near the end of behavioral estrus. So the female should be inseminated 12 and 24 hours after the onset of estrus to ensure that sperm is deposited before ovulation. And timing of this is really important just to ensure high conception rates, low repeat breeders, just overall maximize productivity. So to find the signs of estrus, the most common way is the back pressure test. So if you look here, you'll have a technician putting pressure on the back of the sow when they're exposed to the boar. And if they have a rigid back and legs, if they're overall just locked up, then you know they're in estrus. Other signs include a swollen vulva with mucus discharge, alertness when presented with the boar, so you'll see perked, twitching ears, very still movements. In the results of this study, 45.8% of the no boar exposure group showed spontaneous estrus, and then that was followed with 56.3% of fence line boar exposure, and then all the way up to 88.5% of the group with physical boar exposure showed spontaneous estrus. And then farrowing rates followed a similar pattern. The lowest numbers were in the sows with no boar exposure. They had rates of about 44.5%. Sows with fence line boar exposure were up to 66.1% farrowing rate, and then those with physical boar contact had farrowing rates all the way up to 88.3%. So the next study I looked at, we looked at duration and intensity of the boar exposure, not just the actual presence of the boar. They had 3 different groups of boar exposure times, the 5, 12.5, or 20 minutes a day. They had 3 different amounts of gilts in a group. We had 2, 4, or 8 gilts. And then they looked at the effective pen sizes. So we had 11.1 or 22.2 square meters for the pen size. And these factors matter because size of exposure pens, it's important in how producers choose to set up their barns. It affects the amount of resources you'll need. Finding the ideal amount of gilts in a group will affect how many boars you need to have on site. And then all these factors work together to maintain earlier puberty and gilts and just enhance production. So the results that they found were that gilts grouped in pairs reached puberty significantly faster than those housed in groups of 4 or 8, and then a larger proportion of those gilts that were grouped in pairs reached puberty within 21 days of treatment than those in groups of 4 or 8. As far as pen size, the smaller exposure pens increased the number of interactions that the gilts had with the boar, although it was inconclusive whether size of the pen affected the rate of puberty attainment. And then, out of all these factors, duration of boar exposure was the single most important factor on reducing the time it took to reach puberty. Gilts that had 20 minutes of boar contact a day reached puberty the quickest with an average of 20.9 days, and this was significantly faster than those that received 12.5 minutes of boar contact a day. Those reached puberty in 28.4 days. And then those that only received 5 minutes of boar contact a day reached puberty in 30.3 days on average. The last thing we looked at was semen quality and sow productivity. So in this study, semen quality was examined in boars that were collected every 24 hours and then those that were collected every 96 hours. So then the sows were then inseminated with the 2 groups of semen and reproductive parameters were then examined. So with the results, farrowing rate was increased in sows that were inseminated with the semen collected at 96-hour intervals, and there was a 30% increase in the number of piglets born alive with the sows that were inseminated with semen at the 96-hour intervals. But there was no correlation seen regarding litter sizes and collection intervals. And then if we just look at overall semen quality, motility, morphology, just the total number of sperm. Those that were collected every 96 hours exceeded the ones that were collected every 24 hours in just every category. So that can be contributed to the results. And then Boar contact in PG600. This study compared the effect of PG600 when used alone, and then in conjunction with Boar exposure. We looked at puberty attainment and maintenance of estrus. So what PG600 is, it's a combination of serum gonadotropin and chorionic gonadotropin, and it's used to maximize pig flow for producers. It syncs up gilts and estrus, or sows and estrus, and it can help induce estrus in prepubertal gilts. So what they found is that days to puberty was reduced when gilts received Boar exposure in addition to PG600, and then the proportion of sows displaying standing estrus was also increased when they received Boar exposure in addition to PG600. So, even, yeah, I lost my train of thought, but that's all I've got.
Oh, that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Okay, that was good.